Let's talk about the Plotinian Image. Hi, I'm Eric Steinhardt. You can learn more about me at my website, ericsteinhardt.com. And that cover image is by Fyodor Bronikov, and it's called Pythagoreans Celebrating the Sunrise, a great little pagan image to get started there. So, what have we got? Let's start with the sea. What does the sea symbolize? What does all this water symbolize? It symbolizes the abyss of non-being, the ocean of non-being. Non-being is the zero, it's the nothing, the not, it's pure negativity. And non-being in its pure negativity negates itself. The sea, the ocean, of course, is symbolized by water, the element of water. But when non-being negates itself, this self-negation of non-being produces being itself. The negation of non-being is being. Not this being or that being, but being itself. And being itself emerges from the sea like an island. Being itself is the one. So in this Plotinian image, the zero is coming before the one. Plotinus didn't have the zero. It wasn't in his number system. But it's been pointed out that if Plotinus had known about it, he would have started with the zero. Of course, we can't say that for sure, but there are lots of places where Plotinus talks about the one as if it were a zero. So we started with the zero, the sea. Self-negation of non-being, right? That self-negation produces the island of being itself, the one. And that's symbolized by Earth. Now we get to the Axis Mundi. What is that? It's like a line of dots rising up into the sky, giving us the element of air, the sky. And what is the sky going to be? The sky is going to be filled with abstract objects, the Platonic forms. This axis, the Axis Mundi, the axis of the world spindle, of course, it appears in Plato's Timaeus. Plotinus talks about it many times. It rises from the bottom of the great chain of being all the way up to the top. And so it's like the spine of the world, right? The trunk of the world, the trunk of the great world tree. And what should these primary abstract objects be? They're going to be the numbers. And so the numbers rise up from being itself. These are the first beings in Plotinus, right? The first forms are the numbers. Being itself brings the beings into being, and it generates the numbers. There you see 0, 1, 2, up, dot, 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 through all the finite numbers till we get to the first infinite number, Aleph naught, then the next infinite number, Aleph 1, dot, 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 up to omega, which is the proper class of all ordinal numbers. That's a transcendental object existing at the top of the sky, right, like a star. And we can think of the Platonic forms, right, as branching out from unity into diversity along that number line. What would they look like? And the little circles there, the arcs, right, give you a sense of the expansion of the forms up into the sky, and the little bare skeletal tree branches give you a sense of these forms as branching out. So what are they going to look like more specifically? Here's one way to think of them. Think of them as binary numbers, especially if we've got the 0 and the 1. Let's let that backward z be the existential quantifier in modern predicate calculus logic, and that gives birth to, what's that upside down v? That upside down v, the vel, is the null string, a string of length 0. Right? That's the first string to appear, the first binary string to appear. It begets two binary strings of length 1, 0, and 1. Each one of those begets two more binary strings. And so we now have a branching binary tree, a tree of Platonic forms. And I'll just point out that, of course, Platonic forms can be used as these binary strings can be used as computer programs. So the forms can be thought of as computer programs, zeros and ones being binary digital strings for digital computers, but they can also be thought of as sets, right? Set theory shows us how we can encode sets as binary strings, where the strings indicate membership relations. And that's technical and we won't go into it here. But the Platonic forms can be these binary strings, which can be thought of as computer programs or as sets, pure sets. And of course, the sky is the element of air. Right, up in the sky filled with air, and air is the symbol for the way that abstract objects exist, abstract existence. What's next? Next we come to the good, right, up in the top of the sky, the top of the Axis Mundi, above that tree, that bare tree, is the good. And the good is an abstract object too. What kind of abstract object? Well, later we'll talk about how the good is a proposition. Propositions being abstract objects. And there's the good symbolized by that good Platonic image of the sun, also found in Plotinus. And the good stands above the tree of forms, right? It illuminates the forms in the tree of forms. And the good, of course, the sun corresponds to the element of light. Let's go back to the good and the forms. There's the light shining on this tree, and when light shines on a tree, it brings things into being. Plato said the good is the source of the being of all concrete things, and so there it shines on these abstract forms. It's somehow going to bring concrete things into being. How does this work? Let's think of those binary strings also as genetic strings, right? Like digital DNA strings. And so we've got a tree of these cosmic genomes. They're going to be the forms for what? They're the forms for universes, like in Plato's Timaeus, right? Plato's Timaeus, the demiurge, looks at an eternal pattern, a pattern for a living organism. Well, what kind of pattern is that? That's a genome. And genomes can be thought of as binary digit strings or as computer programs. And so we can just think of the tree of binary strings as a tree of genomes for different universes. When the good shines on these, and it doesn't shine equally on all of them, right? The good illuminates the best of these genomes, right? And it leaves the worst of them to lie in utter darkness. But when it shines on some of these best genomes, they burst into flames. They're illuminated and they're energized now. They're energized by a divine fire, right? Iamblichus, the Neoplatonist, talks about divine fire energizing all things. And this comes from the stimulus of the good, striking the light of the good, striking these forms, and they burst into flames. What are they? They're the forms for universes. So if we have a tree of activated or energized forms, right, those forms, those genomes start to live, and they live like the Platonic demiurges live. They're the genetic recipes that guide the growth of demiurges as they produce their universes. There's just a simple illustration of how an original sort of demiurge there at the bottom gives birth to two offspring demiurges, with the birth relation following the relation of forms in the tree of forms. And so we get the world tree, right? A tree of demiurges rising up from being itself. Being itself generates these demiurges, the black dots, which give birth or give rise to their universes and give birth to more demiurges, filling out the great world tree. Following, right, each one of those demiurges is running one of the programs in the tree of binary strings. And all of these are illuminated by the good. And so we've got the element of fire now, right? Fire is that energy that flows through the world tree, the vital energy that animates or energizes or powers the demiurges. The Stoics would have called it pneuma. We can use the English word spirit for that fire, but it's a purely natural force, nothing supernatural about it. There was never anything supernatural about the Stoic pneuma either. So from fire, we move on now. We've got the five elements. We've got water, we have earth, we have air, we have light, we have fire, the five elements. We'll put those together in a minute, but now we've got the first appearance of the Plotinian image, right? Once those demiurges are active, their universes are like leaves on the world tree, so the world tree there is filled out nice and green. So we've got the sea there in blue, then the island of being itself rising out of it, the forms generating in ever-expanding circles upwards into the sky, up along the Axis Mundi, which takes us up to the sun, the good, which has energized the bare tree and brought forth its leaves. And if we fill this out even further, we're going to get stars in the sky, right? The good is not the only stellar object up there. What are those stars? These are transcendental objects. They're proper classes. They're unsurpassable sequences of surpassable things. So for instance, divine minds are unsurpassable sequences of surpassable minds, minds that rise through every level of computability. And so this is the Plotinian image. And it is, in fact, an image that you can find many times in Plotinus. And we'll talk about that at another time. In the meantime, there we go. To summarize, those are the 5 elements: fire, water, earth, air, and light. They can be arranged into a pentagram or pentacle, right? The 5-pointed star inside a circle. And if anyone thinks that's a modern image, let me point out that that's a Pythagorean image. We opened with the Pythagoreans celebrating the sunrise, and the Pythagoreans are said to have used the pentacle as a symbol of greeting to each other, a symbol of membership in their society. So the pentagram or pentacle is an ancient pagan symbol. It's not a modern symbol. It dates way back. And so thank you very much. This is Eric Steinhardt. You can learn more about me at ericsteinhardt.com. Thank you very much.